I'm going to tell you something I haven't said out loud, but I've been really thinking about. I'm a health psychologist. I'm a researcher. I'm the director of clinical researchers at one of the top medical schools in the country. I have a career that's about studying how people navigate stress and change and deal with uncertainty. And right now, today, I just don't feel like I know whether I can retire. And it's on my mind. It's not like I'm overwhelmed and I'm having frightful thoughts or catastrophizing. I have some funding set aside and I have a plan. But to be honest, in the middle of the night, when I think about all the things that are going on and what's happening with so many people that I know my age, how we're all sitting with this issue about what's happening with retirement, really not talking about it. Now, I'm probably about 3 or 4 years away from really making the decision about retirement. But it makes sense, I think, to start thinking about it. I have family members who are saying, "Why are you thinking about it? What are you going to do? Come on, what's the problem?" I feel like I'm just standing in front of a black hole because it feels so uncertain and I can't really see what's in front of me. I feel like right now our economy is unstable. AI is exploding and reshaping everything. And honestly, it's changing some of the things that I do because in healthcare and housing, everything, it's just become everywhere. I don't know if you feel that. And my cost of living keeps climbing. And every time I think about it and do the numbers and I sit down to try and make a plan, I feel just this really overwhelming, like, I'm not sure I know what to do. And it feels troublesome. Does this sound familiar to you? So if you're 55 or 68 or 72 and you're feeling the same things, today I'm going to talk about what the research actually says about retirement anxiety, financial insecurity, and the AI economy. So this is MC. I'm Healthy by George. I come every week to talk about aging and longevity and all those things that'll make us be the very best version of who we are into our 80s and 90s. So one of the things I want to say at the beginning is I wish someone had given me that first time I Googled, I'm ready to retire at 11 at night and somehow didn't spiral out of control. My mind just thinking about retirement is not possible. They keep saying you need over 1 million in your 401k. And if not, you need more like 2 million. Is holy crap. What can I depend on? There was a survey in 2025 that found that more than 70% of Americans over 65 haven't yet retired or have postponed their retirement plans. 70%. The share of pre-retirees out there actually has increased and that people are just working longer. And almost half of these people say they won't have enough money. And 44% of those surveyed blame the inflation and rising costs. So this kind of put me frozen, to be honest, when I read it. And the researchers at Boston College found that this anxiety is mostly over Social Security and Medicare and taxes, and inflation is really making everything about retirement to be uncertain. So delaying retirement or maybe adopting a conservative strategy is the approach. But one senior researcher made a very clear distinction that I think is critical. We're not talking about actual changes. We're talking about what people not knowing what's going to happen. And that is what shapes their uncertainty. And that is what drives this behavior. It's the not knowing what's going to happen. And truthfully, none of us know what's going to happen. Uncertainty itself is something that we are uncertain of. It's not facts, it's not numbers, it's uncertainty. What is that? This is one of the things that I think drives our fear of knowing what to do about retirement. And it's driving mine, the uncertainty about what the future holds. And what are we going to think about or experience when we're thinking about our bank accounts, or we're thinking about how we're going to respond to the changes if we decide to retire? Because truthfully, I know other people who retired and they really realize they don't have enough money to live every day. And guess what? Many of them have gone back and gotten part-time jobs. I think that's one of the critical things that comes up. And then on top of everything, there's this whole AI, which to name it, I think it's also another thing about uncertainty. There was a report in March 2025 of the International Monetary Fund that about 40% of global employment was exposed to AI. Who in the world knows now what it is here in May of 2026? And that possibly 70% of workers over 45 expect to be engaged in AI, and that this is going to transform our workplace within the next 2 to 3 years. And yet none of us have really understood what this transition is going to be with AI. It seems to be a very gray area. And I work in academic medicine and research, and I'm doing this YouTube channel, and I do clinical work where I'm working on a device to help with chronic pain. And none of us are immune to how this AI knowledge is going to be incorporated and accessed and valued. And it just adds this really overwhelming layer of uncertainty to my sense of knowing about retirement. So here's I want to start. If you are feeling an overwhelm and you're on the fence, and yet you know in the next several years, but right now the world feels so unstable to even plan. And it's not that we're behind or anything or we're failing. It's just very rational to feel this way when there's such a uncertain moment right now in history. So let's talk about what you can do. I think that's really what's critical. So when I really started thinking about my own retirement and the uncertainty, instead of avoiding it, I realized that I needed to feel one thing. I know that naming things and describing them helps me address the problems, and maybe it'll help you. So the most obvious one to ask ourselves is, do I have enough? Will it last? And I think we have to know, what does enough even mean in an economy where everything costs more than it did 3 years ago? Here's what the research says. 42% of people report feeling unprepared to navigate this ongoing economic uncertainty. But what matters is that nearly 6 in 10 people who work with a financial advisor say they feel prepared. And you know something? I've been avoiding working with a financial advisor. Been doing it in my head, and it's been waking me up at night. So one of the realizations I have is I need to have some clear, someone that I can talk to help me sort through out loud kind of my financial decisions. And I want to use a fee-only financial planner. I don't want someone who's going to give me this financial planner where they take a percentage of whatever or commissions. I don't want them to sell me something. I just really want someone to help me navigate and think through it clearly. I think the other thing is, who are we as we going to retire? That I think is the bigger question. Right now, I use my schedule and my working with the academic medicine field as a way to structure my day. I have this meeting at this, so I can do X, Y, and Z in the morning, and then I have my meeting and I do X, Y, and Z in the afternoon. If I stop doing that, then just what is going to happen? What's going to fill my day? Am I going to be bored? So I think what psychologists call a post-retirement identity crisis, which I'm not sure I'll have that. But just sometimes when people do lose that sense of what it is that they've been doing that's central to their life, they regret it. That 1 in 5 retirees regrets that they weren't prepared for the shift followed when they stopped having what it was that they did every day. And that some said this: if I could go back, I would find my sense of self outside of my work before retiring. And when I read that, I really felt it in my core because sometimes I am my work. I feel very accomplished. I really like all the various things I do as a researcher, working clinically and teaching and hosting and singing and performing. And those are all threads of who I am. But I don't know whether I can afford to retire and still be who I am if I'm not doing all. But the research suggests that retirement affects our sense of who we are and how much of our identity is tied to our work. So for people with a high work identification, the trauma can feel like a big loss, a grief catches you off guard when you retire. That is real, and that deserves some planning and some thoughtfulness so that it isn't sneaking up on you and it's something you've thought through. I think the other thing that doesn't really come up is that the world is changing faster than we've ever seen it before. And that maybe the way that we have planning right now is not going to be realistic in even 3 years because of AI and how it's reshaping industries. Our political and economic state is very uncertain, and who knows what's going to happen. We just don't have as much certainty as we've had in the past. And sometimes I feel already obsolete. AI is just going to make this even more turbulent for retirement. And it's going to change our world so radically. But in some ways, I understand it and like it. And I feel like if I don't stay working, I'll lose that sense of knowledge about what AI can and can't do. I'm not sure. And that's where I found that I need to frame this in a hopeful way. A relationship between AI and aging is not something that's static. My curiosity is going to keep me learning, and I hope it will you too, because one of my favorite things is to stay learning. And I want to share with you what I've been learning, that paralysis can change to possibility, not from having fearfulness, but place of genuine seeking the awareness of what it is. Because one of the cruelest things about retirement anxiety is that we don't have a plan for the future and that we allow ourselves to be in this kind of precarious, uncertain place. Because you can't know how long you'll live. We can't know how much healthcare is going to cost. We can't know what AI is going to do to our world in 10 years. But what we know right now is what our life looks like for the next several years. And I think limiting our financial planning to shorter time windows and helping ourselves put steps together so that we can stay more present with what we're doing and stop trying to figure out the future. I think that's where the power lies. Staying present, stay curious, and allow ourselves to challenge that anxiety that shows up. Because avoidance is always a reason that we can fall back on. But is it really what's going to help us? I don't think so. I think sometimes we do need to allow ourselves to grieve over the change that's going to happen so that we can let it go and really embrace planning for the future and what you can look forward to and what you can become curious about so that it can decrease any kind of fearfulness or anxiety and the intensity of the emotion of accepting that you've made the decision to retire. So when that black hole shows up in the middle of the night, really look at it in the face and say, wait a minute, is this real or is this just my imagining? And I'm just fretting about what I don't know hasn't happened already. That's really the key. It hasn't happened. So uncertainty is not the place that we need to go. What we have to do is stay where we are, grounded, thinking, I cannot allow myself to not decide to retire just because I'm not planning. I want to have a relationship that's about being prepared. It's one that gets stronger with me thinking about how to keep myself stably financially, how I can keep myself stable in mental health and secure and feel like I'm doing things every day that are fulfilling. In fact, I wanted to do something that was about these teams of people who go and volunteer in areas where you fly or drive and you volunteer for these kind of immediate medical stations to help those in need who can't get medical care. I really thought that would be so exciting to do. And that's something I really think in the future I could do and enjoy. So we need to allow ourselves to know that we can have a sense of control and that uncertainty is separate from our financial preparedness. And if we use mindfulness so that we stay present and we practice this kind of spiritually centered thoughtfulness, it can allow our nervousness to be released and that we can allow ourselves to let go of this future oriented fear. That you can use mindfulness to recognize that you're in the present moment, and that's really all we have anything controlling. You can use breath work, you can use the body scan, you can be present and anchored and create that space for you that lets go of your nervous system tightening up and thinking, oh, what if, what if? What if isn't here yet? We got to let it go. So take care of your mind is a wonderful retirement planning practice. So I want to close here by saying that this episode is not about creating fear. It's in the spirit of here's what you should think about when this comes up for you. And if you're already retired, I'd love to hear what you're doing. And maybe you have had your fee only financial advisor and you've got a great plan and you're doing things that you've wanted to do and it didn't feel very scary. I would love to hear from you because those are the things that I'm planning to set up for myself so that I can start to understand what will make me feel better when I approach that time that I'm considering to retire. So please think about subscribing. I'd love to see you here. That when we think about retiring, it's just not about money questions or identity questions. It's really about what gives me meaning and what is it that I want to do that continues the purposefulness of our lives. Because it isn't organized around a job. It's organized around who we are. I'm a performer. I'm a singer. I'm a storyteller. I'm a curious person. I love connections and learning and making things. And when I decide to retire, none of that goes away. It's still who I am. So who are you when you think about this time of approaching retirement? And how can we build toward it? So please, we have this one precious life. Let's live it to the fullest. Let's learn how we can do whatever we can right now to help ourselves whether we're contemplating retirement in the next year, or maybe you're younger and you haven't even contemplated how you're going to set aside money in a 401k or prepare for the future. Believe me, everyone should have some kind of plan, no matter what their age is. And definitely consider how we can make ourselves the best version of who we are so that we can live into our 80s and 90s and find ourselves functional and enjoying ourselves and recognize that we're never alone in any of our decisions. See you next time and tell me how you're figuring this out, because guess what? I don't have it figured out yet. But I want to be very clear that this isn't about problem solving. It's about answering what it is that's useful for you and how you can decide to navigate these kinds of difficult decisions. But the research clearly says staying present is the power choice so that you can take the next step and that you can name what you're afraid of. You can build a team around you that supports you and helps you so that you can understand the whole story of who you are, not just financially, not just by what you do at your job, but the whole of who you are. And AI is never going to be you or me. It's always going to be something that's a digital component. And the real life, the real meaning of life, it comes with this deep sense of connection to each other. So please think about subscribing. And there's a link in the bio to my newsletter called Glow Up, where I talk about healthy aging and living intentionally through every season of life. Talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
So thank you so much for joining me at Healthy by George. I hope you found the information inspiring and that it encourages you on your wellness journey. Because remember, your body, your well-being are a most precious gift, and every tiny action taken daily can make a huge difference. I hope the information here is educational purposes and is not meant to replace your medical care. See your doctor and talk about what works for you. If you enjoyed today's content, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Your support means the world to me, and it helps me continuing creating content that inspires and empowers you to live your best life. Goodbye for now, and join me again at the next Healthy by George.